That'll let us know you're there. Good evening and welcome to commissioners, participants, and interested parties to the May 6th, 2021 meeting of the Cohasset Conservation Committee. I'm Chris McFarland, Chairman of the Conservation Committee, and will be running tonight's meeting as we implement the Massachusetts and Cohasset Wetland Protection Acts and the Cohasset Stormwater Management Regulations. We'll be operating this meeting using a Zoom platform, which we'll discuss shortly. Present this evening on behalf of the Conservation Commission are our interim conservation agent, Steve Ivis, who hopefully will be promoted. I'm going to do a quick roll call of the commissioners.
I don't know how to do this video.
Kathy Berrigan.
Where do I do the video from?
Present.
Okay.
Eric Eisenhower.
Aye.
Trish Grady.
Grady present.
Jay Papari.
Oh, launch meeting? No,
I'm just going to make sure I have a hand raised from Jay here. Oh, there he is. He raised his hand. He's here. Marianne Weatherall.
Present.
And Chris McFarland present.
okay.
We also have Associate Commissioners Tom Bell.
Present.
Myself?
Heather Seitz. Raise your hand for me, Heather. Thank you.
Nothing I can go into.
So,
I don't
we
see.
have a quorum tonight of 6 commissioners. We'll be taking all votes via roll call, with each commissioner answering yay, nay, or abstain.
I don't see myself on the main screen. So there's not. This is. I don't know if anybody can hear me. This is Steve Ivis.
Yes, Steve, we hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I guess I'm not on the video screen at all, but they can hear me, Jen. Okay, so what would you? I would be happy to continue with not me being on the screen, but just a disembodied voice.
That's fine.
And I'm promoting everybody. Is there anyone missing?
So Jay, you've got Jay. Heather Seitz needs to be promoted,
Sure.
and you already got Tom.
Eric, I saw earlier.
Yep, Eric's up there.
Eric's here having dinner, Steve.
Okay.
I don't think you want to see me.
What's for dinner,
A lovely baked potato with olive oil. It's delicious.
Sure.
Our first hearing this evening is for 208 Sawyer Street. I don't have a plan in front of me. Does anyone know who's representing them?
Who are we looking for? Which?
I believe it's John Cavanaro. John,
it's
can you raise your
Cavanaro.
hand if
Yep.
it's you?
Yes.
Cavanaro.
Yeah, could you, there you go. Just for anyone who's listening tonight, the Windy Hill hearing, the Ocean Ledge hearing, and the Rust Way hearing have all been postponed or continued until May the 20th. So to kick things off, our first hearing this evening is for a RDA 21-06 and stormwater permit 21-17 for 208 Sawyer Street. In accordance with the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetland Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, May 6, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on the Zoom platform from applicant Town of Cohasset School Department for a request for determination of applicability 21-06 and stormwater permit 21-17 to install a paved area with a handicap parking spot for property located at 203 Sawyer Street.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. If I could ask before I introduce myself, John Cavanaro from Cavanaro Consulting in Norwell, and I'm here on behalf of the town of Cohasset with Glenn Pratt, if he could possibly be promoted as well. I believe Glenn hopefully is in the audience. If not, I will proceed.
There she is. She's been promoted.
That's a handsome Glenn. Okay.
Careful, Sandra.
There's Glenn. Okay, I'm gonna share screen if that's okay.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So if everybody can see that okay?
Yes.
This is a rear portion. I'm going to back it up and then I'll zoom back in. Oh, not too far. This is the Deer Hill Elementary School, essentially. That's what 208 Sawyer Street is. And behind the Deer Hill Elementary School, there is an existing playground that is located in this area that's surrounded by railroad ties.
Just
In order to bring the playground into full compliance with ADA accessibility,
your disembodied voice.
the town is required to include a parking spot, an accessible parking spot adjacent to the facility. So this project is to site a new paved parking spot adjacent to the existing
Thanks very much, Jim. Appreciate it.
behind the Deer Hill School. So as an initial discussion, Glenn met with Jeff Summers, presented the plan to him. He thought the best way to proceed was with an RDA and with an administrative stormwater permit. So that is what's filed. Off-site, there is a wetland located, a bordering vegetated wetland, and that is separated by a chain link fence that runs along the school boundary. This is actually town-owned land as well, where the wetland is located. So there's a 50-foot and a 100-foot buffer zone that comes off of that wetland. Right now, what's existing is a paved parking area behind the school in a fire lane. It's about 10 feet wide, and it runs up through past the playground and then reconnects with some more pavement on the other side of the school. The real prominent features out here are 4 mature trees. And so the sort of the design constraints here were to fit the accessible van size loading ADA space and then return that back into the existing fire lane and try to keep outside of the 50-foot buffer zone and also avoid these mature trees. Right now, there are 2 existing storage containers on site that will be removed as part of this. And the goal is to widen this pavement to enable a handicap accessible space to be sited here with enough room to make a move back out of the area. What's being proposed in addition to the pavement is to offset any increase in runoff. We've sited a crushed stone trench along the edge of the existing pavement and then around the back of an existing catch basin. This is a paved area. And then we've replace some of this is really a lot of bare lawn. So within the confines of the area here and outside the 50-foot buffer, the idea was to replace some of that worn lawn with vegetated plantings to also improve some of the runoff characteristics. So with that is essentially the project in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions, or if I can, I'll ask Glenn.
And John, you say that this parking space brings us up to ADA compliance?
With respect to parking, that's correct.
Mr. Chairman, Steve Ivas here,
Yes.
interim agent. I was out there to the site today. I looked at the wetland flags. They are in the correct locations, just for your information.
Thank you.
John, this is Jay. I appreciate you trying to stay out of the 50-foot buffer. My question to you is does that trying to keep within the 50-foot buffer and not disturbing anything within the 50, does that constrain the turnaround or the accessibility for getting a van in and out of there? But I guess the question I'm asking is if the commission allowed some disturbance in the 50, would that have helped with the turnaround? It looks like it's kind of like a bottleneck in there.
Yeah, so we need at a minimum, Jay, 16 feet for the space and a 5-foot drive aisle. So it's 11 feet with a 5-foot drive aisle. We've widened it to 25 feet to allow for enough room to make what most likely a 3-point turn, but no more than that. So the minimum width for the space, 11 foot with a 5-foot aisle, that's 20 feet deep. That's sort of the minimum space. So the space itself is here. Naturally, we'd like as much as possible, but we did by design. The other thing, it's the 50-foot buffer and these 4 mature trees that are there. We really tried to not get any closer to these trees than necessary.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was see where the remove and reset sign is there, where the kind of the entry there right there. Is that a constraint for you at all, pulling in through there? I think that was more of my concern.
Right. I mean, it's a 10-foot, it's an existing 10-foot fire lane. It's not intended to park right now, so that's why it's so narrow. This widens that a little bit. We pick up about 3 feet. So it certainly enables a one-way. This won't be two-way traffic really ever, since it's one space, and it's not intended to have through traffic. So that was the idea, and also just to try to minimize the overall footprint.
Yeah. So you're comfortable that you can get a car in there, a van in there, turn around and get in and out of there, and you don't need any more space? Because I'd give you more space if you needed it, personally.
I appreciate that. I do think because it's a single space and we're not talking about competing traffic, that it should be.
Okay. I have no further comment. I think it's a great project. I fully support it.
John, sorry, my internet's kind of faulty. I didn't catch everything. What are the current conditions there right now? Is it grass right there?
Yeah, it's bare grass. Some of the grass is in better shape. Most of the grass closest to the pavement is okay. As you get sort of underneath the trees, whether it's the understory of the trees, but this downside slope, it's more bare lawn. So the idea was to improve that bare lawn really with plantings.
With native planting?
Yes.
Is that what you're suggesting?
Sort of some low maintenance rhododendrons, azaleas, sweet spire, maybe something like that.
Okay, thank you.
John, this is Eric. You have something here called mitigation planting. I think there are 3 areas I see in the green hash marks.
Correct.
Why do you have those? That's being mitigated for what reason? It's not clear to me.
It's really stormwater, Eric. It's more for runoff, to improve the runoff characteristics. Right now,
So it's not because you've cannibalized or destroyed or reused a portion of the 50. You're not offsetting and making up for something.
no, it's more for stormwater mitigation
Okay,
to improve the runoff characteristics.
thank you.
Any other questions, comments? So let me check the chat here. Questions and answers. Steve, are you raising your hand currently, or was that an old hand raise?
That must be an old hand raised, and I'll lower that, please, right now, okay?
Thank you.
Certainly, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Pratt, what is your involvement in this? What is your involvement in this project?
I'm the Director of Emergency Management for the town, and this area is directly outside the doorway and entrance to our Emergency Operations Center.
Okay, that's fine.
So we're interested in it being completed if we could.
Thank you.
Well, without any further, oh, yes, Jen.
I am sorry. I just want to let you know that, Chris, I made you the host of this meeting. And so what that means is I'm no longer the host. I was going to promote everybody for you before I departed. If you want to make me co-host again, I can promote everybody for you, or you can just do it or make someone else a co-host to help you out.
Okay.
I
Well,
think
yeah,
when,
you should make someone else just in case of internet.
Sure.
Mary,
If you don't mind just going in, she's having
has
issues.
some bad
Yeah,
internet, so
I'm
maybe
having
someone else.
in and out internet. So
Okay. Do you mind just going in and making me co-host again, and I will take care of everything?
Oh,
So if you just go on the,
yep.
Next to me.
co-host.
yep, And I will promote everybody for your hearing, and I'll make two two co-hosts.
All right, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Sorry about the mix up. It's a little
Kathy,
weird.
is it okay if she makes you co-host? Oh, you're muted. I'm sorry.
Were you speaking to me? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yes, Kathy.
Yes.
Is it okay if Jen makes you co-host of the
Sure,
meeting
sure,
in case? Thank you.
sure.
All right. Seeing no,
When would this, oh, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
John, when would this project start?
I believe they're looking to do it late summer, early fall. Is that correct, Glenn?
Yes, they want to tie it into when they're paving on Sawyer Street over the gas work that was done last year.
And the planting would take place around the fall time period as well?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Having, hearing no further questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion.
Dave Pimpari make a motion to approve the project at 208 Sawyer Street and issue a -2 determination.
Trish Grady, second.
Having heard a motion and a second for approval of the project with -2 determination, take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Jay Pampari,
Aye, Jay Pimpari.
Mary Ann Weatherall. Mary Ann? Nope, she's frozen. Chris McFarland, aye.
Thank you.
I think that was an aye, so that vote passes.
Aye.
Six. Okay, there you go, 6-0. Mr. Papar, would you give us a motion for stormwater permit, please?
Jay Pimpari make a motion to issue a stormwater permit for the project at 208 Sawyer Street.
Trish Grady, second.
Having heard a motion in a second, we'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Jay Pampari,
Jay Pimpari, aye.
Mary Ann Weatherall,
Marianne Weatherald, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. Stormwater permit passes 6-0.
Thank you very much for your
Thank
time
you.
and consideration.
Thank you, John and the town for bringing that swing set and playground up to code. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay. Our second hearing this evening, I'll read the public notice. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetland Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, May 6, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform from applicant John Shivo for a notice of intent 21-20 and a stormwater permit 21-18 to reconstruct, including parking, grading, landscape, utilities, a mixed-use building at 147 South Main Street destroyed in a fire. Okay, it looks like people have already been promoted.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is Adam Brodsky. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you, Mr. Brodsky. Before we move ahead, are any of the other attendees, Lynn Schwann, Carolyn
No.
Reese, Steve, and Sanji Fernando, are they part of your hearing or not?
No, sir. We have Jeff Hassett, our professional engineer, and the applicant himself, John Scalvo.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Oh, good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Brodsky. I'm an environmental and land use lawyer, and I represent the applicant. Here with me is Jeff Hassett, as I mentioned, our professional engineer, as well as Mr. Schiavo. I'm just going to give you a brief overview, then turn the presentation over to Jeff. You're likely familiar with the site. It's the site of a former auto body repair shop, which had 2 residential units above. The structure was destroyed by a fire and demolished. And rather than reconstruct the same building in the same footprint, which was right on the street, we're proposing to construct a new building with the same total square footage and move it to the rear of the site. The building will contain retail and business units on the first floor, and again, residential units on the second floor. We have applications pending with the Zoning Board of Appeals for special permits, including a floodplain special permit, and an application pending with the Planning Board for site plan review. The project was submitted for peer review by the Planning Board to Amory Engineers, which also reviewed our stormwater management BMPs. And in fact, we've completed that process. And as Jeff will explain to you, Amory has signed off on the project. We're seeking an order of conditions and a stormwater permit. As Jeff will explain, the site contains bordering vegetated wetland, degraded riverfront area and land subject to coastal storm flowage. And with that very brief overview, let me turn it over to Jeff to take you through the particulars.
Great, thank you, Adam. And I'll share my screen so I can point out the plan.
Thank you.
Yep, there it is. All right, thank you again. For the record, Jeff Hassett, civil engineer with Morse Engineering, and we filed a notice of intent and a stormwater permit for the redevelopment of this property at 147 South Main Street. As Adam noted, it was formerly developed with an auto shop with 2 apartments above, which that building was lost in a fire. So currently the property is previously developed, and what sits on the property now is the remains of the building that was destroyed, which had a concrete slab foundation, as well as other concrete areas, asphalt areas, reclaimed asphalt, and gravel. The site is partially within a FEMA zone AE elevation 9, which is land subject to coastal storm flowage. Otherwise, the site is entirely upland. The vegetated wetlands are off-site. They include a BVW along Spring Street, which is shown in blue. The 50-foot buffer is in red, and the 100-foot buffer is in green. To the north of the property, off-site, is a perennial stream, which is off of the page, but the 100-foot buffer is shown in magenta, and the 200-foot buffer in magenta as well, extending onto the subject property. And the property is generally flat. So in the proposed conditions, the building will be moved back away from South Main Street. The property will be accessed from South Main Street only, so there will no longer be access from Spring Street. And there will be parking along the front of the building and along the side. We have designed the project in accordance with your Wetlands Protection Act, as well as the local bylaws. Some of the things I wanted to point out regarding the design is that the building is the same size footprint as the existing. And all of the parking will be porous asphalt. We made that modification at the request of the zoning board. So by doing so, it's a very significant reduction in impervious area. And currently there's no stormwater on the site, and in the proposed conditions, again, we'll have porous asphalt, but then also the roof runoff goes to dry wells and also to a rain garden. So I'll flip to the grading plan. We have a dry well for the roof runoff on one side of the building, and then on the down gradient side of the parking lot is a rain garden.
Jeff, would you mind blowing that up a little bit, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So the stormwater results in an 80% reduction. So it's a very large reduction. That has been reviewed and approved by Amory Engineers on behalf of the planning board. All other things to note is that all of the work is in areas that were previously disturbed, and all of the work is outside of the 50-foot buffer. This here is a 50-foot buffer, and this area is currently reclaimed asphalt and gravel, and they actually use it for access onto the property from Spring Street. That will all be landscaped, and show that's on the previous plan. So there's a maple and a number of evergreens that will be planted in the 50-foot buffer to restore it. Other than that, the contractor will follow the standard construction practices. We have a 12-inch diameter mulch socket around the entire limit of work and a stabilized construction entrance off of South Main Street. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Steve Ivas, were you able to review this project?
No, I'm sorry, I never got out to this location. I just started today, so it was difficult.
Understood. Okay, commissioners, do we have any comments?
I have a question. This was a former auto body shop, presumably had a paint booth as well. Is that correct, Jeff?
It was an auto body shop.
Yeah.
I do not know if it had a paint booth.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's been any kind of testing of the soil here for dense non-aqueous phase solvents.
There has been, and Adam can give you some more information on that.
Oh, great.
Yes, so as a result of the fire, the site was evaluated to determine whether there had been a release of oil or hazardous materials. And in fact, a determination made. So this site was reported to DEP, and Mr. Schiavo hired Stantec to perform assessment and response actions. They went through the entire MCP process, which included analysis of soils and groundwater on the site. There was some remedial work performed, and the site closed out with a permanent solution without conditions. And so all of the environmental conditions associated with the fire and the releases in connection that were closed out.
Mr. Brodsky, is that a commercial building 21E?
No, these are actual response actions performed consistent with Massachusetts 21E. So this was a active remediation site that went through the entire Massachusetts contingency plan process. And ultimately, a Stantec submitted a permanent solution without conditions. I think what you're referring to is when you have a conveyance of commercial property, there are certain environmental evaluations that are performed, principally, to secure financing. Those are governed under the ASTM, and that's a different process than what was done here. This is the actual Massachusetts state regulatory process under Chapter 21E to address the issues associated with the fire.
Adam, so this apparently was cleared through DEP. This did not make it to the, assuming does not make it to the federal level. This is not on, assuming this is not on the national priorities list.
No, this is not a federal Superfund site. This is a state regulated site under Chapter 21E. And I should say a former site, because with the filing of the permanent solutions submittal, it's been closed out with DEP.
And the test pits that are referenced on the set of drawings, were they taken at that time?
No, I believe in Jeff, those were done for stormwater analysis, but I'll defer to Jeff on that.
Yeah, that's correct. They were excavated to determine groundwater and soil types for the design of the stormwater.
And when was that done, Jeff?
November 4th, 2020.
Can you go to that slide, Jeff, with the test pit data, please? So you went down around 8, about anywhere from 7 to 8.5 feet here?
That's correct. And we did not have refusal.
And did you do 4 test pits, Jeff?
We did 4 test pits, yeah.
What's the elevation of the water table there?
It's relatively shallow. It's about 2.5 feet down is what we use for
So you
calculations.
got below the water table.
What's that?
You got below the water table.
We did, yes. Yeah.
And And could you explain what a permanent solution without conditions is, please? Or just give me a
Yes.
breakdown of.
So it is the closeout document where the licensed site professional certifies that the site has been cleaned up, and in this case, the levels of contaminants were reduced to background levels. So it's the regulatory endpoint under the state hazardous waste, hazardous materials cleanup statute.
Can you comment on which, if any, compounds were identified that were above detection?
I'd have to do it from memory. Again, we're getting a little bit far afield of wetlands. This is all regulated by Mass DEP under the 21E program. But off the top of my head, there were, I believe, EPH. I believe that there were, I'm trying to do this, VOCs. And there were, I believe, metals, the typical constituents associated with an auto body repair use were evaluated. And again, all of this work is performed by a licensed site professional who is a licensed and trained environmental professional who has to certify compliance with the cleanup regulations.
Yeah, my concern would be dense non-aqueous phase liquids.
So as we've said to both the zoning board and the planning board, I mean, if during construction any hazardous materials are encountered, this would be treated like any other site. And that if there's a reportable condition, the reportable condition would be reported to DEP and addressed accordingly.
How would they recognize that?
Excuse me?
How would they recognize that?
Well, again, I appreciate the questions, but this is far afield of the Wetlands Protection Act. This is not within this commission's purview. I'm going to try and answer my questions to your best of my ability.
Good, thank you.
But you know, generalized concerns regarding the possible nature of contamination is not regulated under the State Wetlands Protection Act.
But I agree with that, but we're talking about a stormwater permit here. So if there is a layer of contamination, whether it be in the first 6, 8, 10, 12 inches, if stormwater is going to be coming in contact with any material, we want to make sure that there's no further contamination, if contamination exists at all, moving on to other sites. So I think it's a valid question.
There were very limited contaminants which were associated with the fire that had been remediated. There have been no indications or observations of any other, hazardous materials on the site. It's conjecture to think that there may be. And again, I'll let Jeff speak to that issue. I don't think any of the stormwater management measures would deal with hazardous materials. You're more concerned with particulates.
Is there, can we get a copy of that report from the final copy of that report? I don't know if
yes, it was submitted to both the Zoning Board of Appeals and to the ZBA. I'm happy to provide it to the commission. You can also download it from the DEP website. All of these records are publicly available, but I'll make a note and we'll send you a copy also.
Thank you.
Jeff, can you tell me or tell us the volume of water that is, or storm that's expected to be held in the reservoir beneath the porous asphalt?
So the stormwater calculations don't account for the volume below the asphalt. There's about 2 feet of crushed stone.
Yeah.
And the calculations take credit for the runoff curve number associated with porous asphalt, but we're not taking credit for that storage volume. So what we do take credit for in the calculations is the rain garden and the dry well. And there is overflow from those in the 2-year storm event. So by not taking credit for the stone, it's a very conservative calculation.
So does that suggest that the that the porous asphalt's not necessary, or if you're not taking credit for that?
It really is not necessary. On the original submittal, we did not have porous asphalt. And it was something the zoning board asked us to look into providing, and we did so.
The reason I'm asking is that if I read your operations and maintenance section, and porous asphalt is known to clog over time. If it does clog, then it's going to, if I'm reading the grading correctly, it's going to dump into the rain garden, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, well, I'll come back to it. That's what I'm thinking about right now.
Yes, I mean, the porous asphalt is kind of above and beyond. The calculations don't rely on it. And in the operation and maintenance plan, like you noted, there is maintenance required for the porous asphalt. We know that it shall be inspected quarterly to ensure that the surface drains properly after storms. As needed, clean the surface using a power washer to dislodge trapped particles, and then vacuum sweep the area. Minimize salt use during winter months. No sanding shall be conducted, and keep landscape areas well maintained to prevent soil from being transported onto the pavement.
Right.
So it's common sense stuff. And then there is a checklist that goes with it that the property owner is responsible to fill it out quarterly.
I know it's common sense stuff. I also know of I know of projects where over time the kind of that checklist, starts to become nothing more than a checklist, and that's why I was wondering. I mean, if you're not relying on it, then I really have nothing more to say about it. But when I first looked at it, my thought was if you didn't dump into the rain garden, but instead had a curb at that location, it would almost be a way for the owner to know that he has a problem versus not, because the truth is, if it fills up and it's not working, but it's flowing to the rain garden, there's no way of knowing for sure that the system continues to work or doesn't work. So
yeah, I mean, when the system's functioning the way it should, you really don't get any runoff from it. You can look at videos online where they have a fire hose spraying right onto a parking lot and the water's going right down.
Right.
It's pretty impressive stuff.
So is that then a visual test that the owner does in order to accept that it's continuing to work?
That's correct. Yeah.
And if someone from the town, if a conservation agent from the town wanted to see that, he'd be able to do it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the 15 parking spaces that are shown on the site, is that meet the zoning?
We are asking for relief on the parking.
Or asking for relief on the parking.
Well, I'm just going to clarify, we're not asking for relief. It's a pre-existing non-conforming condition that we're continuing. So the parking associated with the former use was non-conforming. We're actually improving things by providing more designated parking spots on, actual parking surfaces. But it's a continuation of the existing non-conforming parking, which needs to be approved by special permit. So if Jeff was suggesting that was the relief, it has to be approved by special permit by the zoning board.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Adam. And going back to the inspections, the O&M plan does state that the log shall be made available to Mass DEP and the town upon request. Members and agents of Mass DEP and the town shall be allowed to enter and inspect the premise to evaluate and ensure that the responsible parties complies with the operation and maintenance plan.
Mr. Chairman, I would be more comfortable if Steve Ivis took a look at this. before we proceed too much forward on this.
So noted.
Are you saying tonight, or I would like to actually see the site?
Yeah, of course.
Thank
That's what Ms.
No,
Weatherall recommended.
Right, I didn't think you could do it this evening, but before we took a vote on it, I think I'd be more comfortable getting your opinion as well.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
I would support that as well. I would like to think that, you know, that I could support the project, but I don't really have a lot to go on. I understand that there has been some work done. If the site has been cleaned up, then that's wonderful. If it's gotten a stamp of approval, great. I would like to see that report from the state. There's been no, and it sounded like earlier on, I heard that there was a stormwater review done by either the planning board or ZBA. If there's a report on that, I would like to see that as well. The Conservation Commission has received no documentation whatever other than the stormwater application, the notice of intent application, and the site plan here. So it's not a knock on the applicant. It's just that there's been no connection between any of the other boards in the town in the Conservation Commission. So we just have this plan that's in front of us. Up until 59 minutes ago, we haven't even had a conservation agent to do any reviews of any projects really that are in front of the commission this evening. So I would like to have our stormwater interim agent, and I'm assuming that he's going to have time in the next week or two here. It's unknown what the responsibilities, duties are, but I would like to think that our interim agent could review this and do an assessment on his own and submit those two documents, the stormwater report that was done or evaluation, and the Mass DEP or state report, and then reevaluate this project.
Yeah, we have no problem providing you the Amory report. We presume that the planning board and the zoning board had made that available to you, but we're happy to provide you with the copies.
And further, Adam, if you don't mind, it would be very good to have the specifications on the permeable asphalt.
Could we just touch base on these chambers? Can you tell us more about it? It looks like you have one chamber, you have two retail units or one retail unit, two residential units. And
three residential units.
My concern is, is this chamber enough? Is this chamber enough or large enough for such a building?
Yeah, you're referring to the drywall system in the rear of the building? Yeah, so the stormwater calculations show a very significant reduction in runoff. It's an almost 80% reduction. So certainly the stormwater is over-designed here. The roof downspouts from the rear of the building will tie into that system, and the downspouts from the front of the building tie into the rain garden. And if you look at sheet 6, that drywall system is detailed, and the rain garden is detailed as well. So that's a rain garden and the roof drywall system.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, is part of your calculation the porous pavement, not the porous asphalt? You have a porous walkway at the back of the building. Is that part of the calculation as well?
We're considering that to be, you know, a pervious surface. Yes.
Okay. Could you just give us some clarification? I mean, I think people are asking for some other information which would suggest that we would continue this hearing. Would you give us some information on that as well? It's the one detail you don't have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I'd just like to make a comment, and I know Mr. Brodsky won't appreciate this because it's outside the limits of our purview as Conservation Commission. The lighting on this plan is fairly industrial lighting, and the strongest light level at ground level is immediately outside the neighbor's window at 5.4 or 5.5 foot candles right on the ground. And I'm speaking as a landscape architect. A few smaller lights and more of them can distribute the light in a much more gentle and neighborly fashion. And I'd just like to make that suggestion.
Yeah, we can look into that. We did prepare a photometric plan, and the intent of it is.
Photometrics was where I saw it, and had you not given it to me, I wouldn't have said anything. But you can see that one. You can see the one light directly adjacent to the neighbor's window.
Okay.
Which is
Right. Yeah. So that light is. Oops, sorry, I moved it on you.
That's okay.
It is immediately adjacent to their window. It does have a cutoff, so it doesn't shine light back onto their property.
I know, but it's also the brightest. If you look, I think it's 5.4 foot candles, as opposed to when it stretches way over here, like 0 foot candles. I think the requirement, and I'm not a professional lighting engineer, but I think the requirement for safety in this area would be. Can someone mute, please? Whoever that is. I think the legal requirement is 1 foot candle. So all I'm suggesting is that, to be neighborly, if you could use a smaller fixture and spread them out so they don't have the brightest light right outside their window. That's all. I know it has a cutoff and it's not shining in, but it's going to be bright.
Okay. Yeah, we can certainly accomplish that.
Cool.
Jeff, is there a landscape plan with this? Or maybe I don't have it in front of me. I see a few like landscape bed, but is there a real plan associated with this?
Sheet number 3, I believe it.
Trees.
Site layout and landscaping plan. And there's a stockade fence that goes around the entire perimeter of the project. It's a 6 foot tall solid fence. In addition to that, it does not go along Spring Street. So this is the area where we're keeping the big tree, planting another maple, and then a number of evergreens. I think they're eastern red cedars. And then proposing some eastern red cedars at the rear of the property and dogwoods throughout the parking lot. And there's a table.
Do you have the size of the trees? Do you have the size of the trees on this plan?
I do.
Sizes of the trees that you're proposing?
Yeah, so the dogwoods are 8 to 10 feet. The red maple is a 3 to 4 foot caliper, and the red cedars are 6 to 8 foot.
Actually, Jeff, I read that as 3 to 4 inch caliper.
Did I say feet?
Yes, you said feet.
That would be a big tree.
Yes, and let me ask you, have you had success in using the Cornus Florida? They have a disease that's wiped out an awful lot of them in New England here, just FYI.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. We'll look for an alternative.
Yeah, you may want to do that, just as a suggestion.
I think you'd have a hard time finding someone to sell them to you, Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Certainly Kennedy's doesn't carry them. I know that. I've tried to get one. They wouldn't sell it to me.
No. and neither does Sylvan, by the way.
Yeah.
And the alternative that people use is there's a Japanese dogwood, flowering dogwood, a Kusa dogwood, but it's not a native species, and I would not recommend using it.
Okay, well, we'll look into it. We'll find a native tree.
Sure.
Do we have any other comments from commissioners, or I don't see anything in the chat? So I think what I've heard from Ms. Weatherall and Mr. Pampari is a request for some additional information and to continue this. Is the applicant accepting of that to be continued to the May 20th hearing?
Yes, of course, we're happy to provide that additional information. I do have a question for Mr. Ivis, and he asked for specifications regarding the porous paving. I don't know if he saw the detail in the plans or whether he's looking for manufacturer specifications. I just need clarification of that.
I did not see the detail on the plan, but it would be nice to have the manufacturer's spec in a separate text.
Thank you.
Okay, having heard no objection, we're going to continue this hearing until May the 20th. Oh, now something comes up in chat. That's old. Okay. Thank you very much.
Chairman McFarland?
Yes.
Hi, it's Jen. I'm going to promote the remainder of your attendees and then keep an eye on the meeting, as I said in chat. I don't know who JJ is, and a risk of, I'm just going to promote the next two panelists, I guess, are Lynn Schwant and Sanja Fernando, but I don't know who JJ is. I don't want to risk promoting someone that might not be an applicant.
JJ, could you write in the chat box whether or not you're part of the next hearing?
No, I think it's just us and Jeff Hassett and maybe Brad.
I think the next hearing is a septic repair at 7 Marion.
Oh, you're right, it is. I apologize for that. Sorry, Sanjay. Gonna have to wait one more. And I'd like
Marianne
to.
Way appears to be the next one.
Okay, I'm going to read the public notice. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetland Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, May 6, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform from applicants Silikis and Afshir Khan for notice of intent 21-29 to replace a failing septic system within the 100-foot buffer zone for 7 Marion Way.
All right, thank you, Chris. Jeff Hassett here again. So as you noted, we filed a notice of intent for a septic repair. The address is 7 Marion Road. And this property is developed with a 2-bedroom house that has a failed cesspool. The failed cesspool is in the side yard, about 25 feet away from the wetland. And we are proposing to replace that with a microfast treatment tank, which will flow to a pump chamber, pumping the effluent outside of the 100-foot buffer, being the green line. The leaching field is outside of the 100-foot buffer. There will be an erosion control barrier in place during construction. And I do feel this is a vast improvement, replacing a cesspool 25 feet away from the wetland that's failed with a Title V compliance system 100 feet away. It has been approved by the Board of Health.
Okay.
Jeff, who did the wetlands flagging, please? It's not on the plan, and it should be.
No, it's not on the plan. I believe it was John Zimmer.
Okay. And there's an inland bank noted on the plan, but inland bank to what is my question?
I believe there is an intermittent stream.
Okay. Do you know if it's intermittent? Can you prove it intermittent or perennial? And
Yes.
Go ahead.
So it's not mapped as a perennial stream. I'll note there is a perennial stream offsite on the other side of the road, which the 200-foot buffer comes onto the property from.
Can I clarify that? The perennial stream is indeed mapped on the other side of the road. However, the stream direction is from northwest to southeast. So if it's perennial upstream, unless there's a sinkhole, it's perennial downstream.
Yes, sir. Exactly. That was what I was getting to, Mr. Bell. And where does it go from there is the next question. And just one more question. What is the area that has the cattails directly behind this property, which is off actually to the south and east? There's a pooling area of cattails that looks to me like it's connected to the stream directly behind the house. I think we should all go take a look at it. I was there today and said, my goodness, isn't this a wetland?
I was there a week ago. Same
Yes.
conclusion.
Okay, thank you, sir. Jeff,
I
any
was there,
comment?
Steve. I was there today, and it was very, very wet today. But you know, we've learned the lesson before from the environmentalists that just because it's wet doesn't mean it's a wetland. It's the wetland determination is much more technical than just moisture underfoot.
Well, I said there were cattails growing there,
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
and that's
Steve,
indication of a wetland to me.
This is more than a wetland, it's a stream.
Oh, yeah, the stream, yes, absolutely. But the area I was talking about, Mr. Bell, was relatively non-flowing today. It wasn't flowing too much, but I believe it flows toward the stream. That's my impression.
Jeff, I have a question. Why wouldn't you move the new structure outside of the buffer? Why put it beside the house? Is there a technical reason why it should be right beside the house and why it couldn't be out of the 50-foot buffer at least?
Yeah, because that's where the sewer pipe comes out of the house. So you'd have to redo all the plumbing to get it to come out somewhere different.
Yeah.
And you don't want bends in the pipe between the house and the tank if you can avoid it, because in that section, you still have solids that could clog at the bend.
Right.
Jeff Hassett, what's currently there now?
A cesspool.
A cesspool. That's what I thought.
So to get back to the question before about the wetland, the perennial stream, the wetland flows, the wetland on the site is in this vicinity, and it's up gradient of Bound Brook. You see, Bound Brook has a solid line indicating that it's perennial.
Mm-hmm.
This ditch would flow into Bound Brook eventually.
Okay.
It's not, Bound Brook doesn't flow onto this site is what I'm trying to say. So
Right, we know that. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. This site flows in a southeasterly direction. I would agree with that.
I think
thought there was
it's
a
fair to
comment.
say, given that there is a cesspool there now, literally anything is better than what's currently there now. And assuming there's no sewer in that area, correct?
that's correct, yes.
There's no sewer. The next best thing is a leach field, what you have proposed. And the question is whether or not it's in the right location. There's not, Jeff, if you could put that diagram back up, that would be very helpful. The site plan, I guess, just showing the leach field and the
site plan? Yes.
Yeah, in the front of the driveway or front of the house, sorry.
Sure. Yeah, there's really no other spot to put the leaching field with just the shape of the lot, ledge constraints.
I would completely agree with that. I mean, you're not going to put it in the wetland. It appears you're putting it as far away as you possibly can, given all of the setbacks involved on the side setbacks and the other setback. And you're not going to have it next to the house. You're not going to cut down any of the trees. I don't know where else it could go. And again, any field is better than a cesspool that's in existence right now.
That's exactly correct. And there's a ledge outcrop here that we did test pits here and here that didn't get down deep enough. There's another ledge outcrop here, driveway here, mature trees in this vicinity and closer to the wetland. I mean, this is really the only option for the septic system.
Jeff, I don't understand why you couldn't move it to the west. You don't have the test pits yet for it.
We do have a test pit right here, test pit 3.
Yes.
And the test pit 3, we hit ledge at 7 inches.
Oh, it's 7 inches. Okay. Thank you.
What would that accomplish anyway?
Moving it further from the wetland. I believe there's a wetland just over the stone wall on the southeast corner of the site. In fact, you can see the phragmites from Route 3A, actually, that are there. It's nice to have the wetlands noted on the plan for future reference as well.
I do know in other towns on septic jobs, they frequently will approve the project, but not they'll have a condition that they did not approve the delineation.
Yes, that is true.
I wouldn't argue that a septic tank is infinitely superior to a cesspool. However, I see that you have 4 test pits, 2 in the corners of your drain field, and given the proximity of these test pits and the failure of 2 of the 4, I would think that you would need a few more here to really be able to delineate a zone that is going to have sufficient permeability to host this drain field.
So, I mean, the test pits are witnessed by the Board of Health, and the Board of Health has approved this. We are doing, because of the shallow bedrock, we're doing a treatment system. And so it's not you're allowed to put the system closer to bedrock when you use a treatment tank, because it has a greater level of treatment, you know, rather than just a regular treatment tank that has an inlet T and an outlet T. This actually has filters, and it's pumping air into it to help break down the bacteria. So by the time the effluent gets to that field, it's far cleaner.
Sure.
So what you're saying?
I'm glad that system is being used, but it doesn't really address my point of maybe an insufficient number of test pits for infiltration. I would think that to establish whether or not this really does perk the way you have modeled it, you would probably need at least another test pit on the northwest corner and the southwest corner, because I mean, look at how close your failed test pit is on just outside of the test pit itself. You said 7 inches to bedrock. How do you know that there isn't 7 inches to bedrock on the southwest corner of your drain field here?
Yeah. Well, the Board of Health requires 2 test pits within the septic system. We have those. It complies. During construction, they have to excavate the entire leaching field, and then it has to be witnessed by the engineer as well as the Board of Health agent. And if there's any constraints during that time, if you have a ledge outcrop somewhere, then there may be a slight field change to account for that. I've seen occasionally there might be a ledge outcrop that wasn't anticipated. So we might make the system, say, a little bit longer or a little bit wider to account for that. And that would be a field change agreed on between the health agent and the engineer.
Couldn't you save your client perhaps some money by putting in an inexpensive test pit instead of 2 more, instead of learning as you build? That's really not in our, I mean, we should be telling you how to run your business, but that's.
I did not do the test pits at this site myself, so I can't speak to it, but I can say one of the other engineers who did them felt he had enough test pits to be comfortable with this.
Well, they're highly biased to one side of the leach field.
Yeah, and there's certainly room that, if necessary, the field could be shifted to the east, say 5 feet if they had to.
How do you know that? You don't have any test pits over there.
We have 2 test pits over there.
Well, if you shift it to the southeast, you don't have any test pits outside of the boundary you've drawn. Yeah. So you have no assurance that you're not going to encounter ledge a foot away from your southeast boundary.
Yeah. So I mean, this field is only 15 feet wide. It's 15 by 40.
Okay.
I think maybe also these test pits are smaller than they actually are. When you dig a hole with an excavator, it's usually a bigger disturbance than this small test pit symbol we show. I don't know. I do feel that I'm comfortable with this, and if there were an issue, it would be addressed through the Board of Health. There's really no other alternative here.
Well, there's an alternative
Not really much of an
to
alternative.
reorient there's an alternative to reorient the leach field. I'm not saying there's no alternative at all here. I mean, clearly, again, I'd say that having a Title V compliant septic system is superior to what they have now. I'm just concerned that the design here is fine if everything that you are so confident about is true. But in fact, you have some holes in your site here where you haven't tested, and the effort to do a couple more test pits seems insignificant compared to getting in there with your excavator and tearing up a good deal more ground, exploring for a place where you might be able to fit this cesspool, or not, sorry, this drain field.
I think there's only so, I appreciate those comments, Tom. I also think there's only so many places that this cesspool, this conversation's turning into a cesspool.
Really?
That the actual septic system can go. You know, it's being moved as far away from the identified wetland that's on there. It's completely out of the 100-foot buffer zone. And now I think we're talking about moving it over 8 or 10 feet one direction or another. I think if in reality, yeah, there's some test pits there. If the applicant gets out there and if this project is approved as is, and they find that there's ledge down at 1 foot or 2 feet over here, it's going to have to be moved inevitably anyway. But it's not like this leach field can be put in the 50 or on the other side of the house or in the driveway or existing trees are now. I think it's barring, you know, this potentially identified wetland, that even if it is an identified wetland, where can this leach field go? It seems to be, on paper here, it's in the perfect location. Maybe it can be moved over 5 feet, but I think we're getting into a longer discussion than we probably need to, in my view.
Well, it could be, but maybe the axis could be changed. And Jay, what do we do if, in fact, they get out there and they find that there's no room to put in a leach field, that they can't actually put in a leach field that operates? What happens then?
Well, clearly that's a problem, but I think that on paper here, the engineer has identified a suitable location. He's done 4 test pits. 2 of the test pits, can clearly see exposed ledge. You can see from the other test pit, I think it was hit ledge at, I don't know, less than 1 foot. In the 2 test pits that he has identified, that there seems to be a suitable location. It touches one corner of the leach field all the way up to, what, 40 feet, Jeff? 15 by 40 feet is the distance of that field. So you've covered, barring hitting the other 2 corners there, it looks like, assuming that there's not a ledge outcrop between the 2, that this would be a suitable location.
It seems like we're having a conversation about design standards versus performance standards here.
And just another question, Jeff. Why wasn't across the stream looked at as a potential location?
I wouldn't pump the effluent under the stream over to the other side. I think that would be a lot more. It would be a temporary disturbance of the stream to excavate through it.
Yes, if it's an intermittent stream, it'd be fine, right?
I wouldn't be comfortable with that. It seems like a lot more disturbance than necessary to go through a wetland.
I would not be
I
comfortable
don't think
with
we'd be
that.
comfortable with it either.
No, I would strike
Okay.
that comment.
Well, I just asked the question, that's all. Thank you.
I mean,
I think going back to Jay's comment too, if this system moves, say 5 feet to the west during construction, I mean, we have a test pit at either end of it. A test pit is, and the field's only 15 feet wide. A test pit is 15 feet plus wide to begin with. I think the issue is that the symbols are smaller than the excavation probably actually was. And
How big is the excavation, Jeff, just for our information?
you typically, you're going down in this case, what was it? 7. You're going down 7.5 feet with a small excavator. So the trench might be, say, 15 feet long.
Sure.
And then you typically put a perk shelf on the end of it. So you dig another shelf down about 3 feet coming off the end, and that might make the perk, the test pit, another 10 feet longer.
Yep. Agreed. So the big question I have is, I believe there's a wetland a lot closer than the 100-foot line out there to this particular leaching field location. That's all. And if the commission is okay with that, then I'm fine with it. But I suggest that the commission actually go out there and look at the so-called wetland adjacent and you may consider another type of IA system, Jeff, because I believe you're so close to the wetland. That's all. By the way, IA, innovative alternative system, for those who don't know.
Jeff Hassett, have you evaluated whether or not there's an actual wetland off-site of this property? Has that been evaluated?
I am not aware of an off-site wetland. This is the first I've heard of it.
Would you be willing to evaluate that on your own so we don't have to get into a third party or anything else here? And if commissioners want to go out there and look at it on their own, and I would feel, and I would, Steve, if you want to go out there and do a further investigation as well, but I would leave it to the applicant, in addition to the other reviews, to at least evaluate whether or not they feel there's a wetland there. And if there is, then we deal with it. But if there's not, again, the leach field is out of the 100-foot buffer zone. If there wasn't the excavation from the house to the 100, we wouldn't even be dealing with a wetland issue if there were no wetlands off-site. It would be the stormwater at best.
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, to answer your question, I would explore that to avoid a peer review, but I would urge you as a commission to accept that there's really no other location to put the leaching field.
I completely agree with you.
And condition it that the wetland delineation has not been approved, especially because in this case, this is holding up a sale of the property. The Board of Health has already approved it. So this is kind of the last permit.
So let me ask you this. Sorry.
Look, can I just ask a technical question? If in fact you started to dig this leach field at, call it 15 by 40, and you hit something on one side or the other, or maybe both sides, can it be reconfigured to be a little longer, to have an L shape to it? I mean,
yeah, we'd probably keep it as a regular shape. What we've done on other projects is, say you start excavating out the entire area, and in the middle there's a 5 by 5 ledge outcrop. Well, you shouldn't take credit for infiltration in that area. So we would make the system longer, slightly longer, to have that additional 25 square feet of infiltration area.
And would that have to go back in front of the Board of Health for approval?
No, it wouldn't.
Okay.
It's something we would discuss with the agent when we do the bottom of hole inspection.
But the Board of Health has already approved this design?
They have, yes.
Okay.
One more question, Jeff. If indeed there was a wetland literally at the boundary line to the easterly side there, the southeast side, would you do any difference? Would you have a different design for the leaching field?
I wouldn't. We're already doing a treatment tank, and I'm not aware of any other treatment systems that would provide greater treatment than the one we have here.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Yeah.
Do you have any other questions or comments? there any comments by the audience? I don't see any comments by the audience. So Steve, is your recommendation still to, well, what is your recommendation here?
My recommendation is to at least have somebody else on the commission besides myself and Eric go out and take a look and see if they think there's a wetland there. And also have Jeff Hassett have his consultant, South River Environmental, walk that line along the east side of that site and give us his opinion as to whether there's a wetland along that line. I think it'd just be good to know for the future, if this system ever fails, they'll be held to pay by the commission if we don't understand the wetland on that side. That's all.
Steve, can I ask a question? This is Tricia. You know, given that even if it was a wetland, it wouldn't necessarily change the project design. Are we able to, are you comfortable with us processing it further while noting that it hasn't, we're not approving the delineation as it was discussed earlier?
Yes, I still think that 20 years downstream, this may have a problem due to its location.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with any of that. I just, I don't know what else they can do. And
right, I agree, but you know, the finger or the pointing of blame should not be placed on the Conservation Commission for the commission trying to do what they think is right. But I still think that in order to do what is right, we need to know the wetland location if it does exist there. That's all. It's just.
Chris, maybe my question would be, could we then take a vote on it with can you do an order of conditions to have it redelineated? Or is that, this is just me not understanding?
That wouldn't be necessary. Just to have Jeff have his consultant go out again and have and give us something on paper that says it is or it is not. That's all.
I think we could easily continue this for 2 weeks. And as Steve had pointed out, have Steve go out and do an evaluation along with the chair or anybody else who wants to go out there and evaluate that, and have the applicant, Jeff Hassett, go out there and perform an evaluation to determine whether or not there's a wetland out there. I think we're all in agreement that, as Tom put it nicely, this is infinitely better than what's actually there now. We have a cesspool there now. We have to have an upgrade to a failing cesspool. This is an incredible environmental improvement. It can only move by a little anyway. And if there were a wetland in the area, are we going to make the applicant move it and cut down 4 trees and rip out a side of the house to move it? No, it'd probably go over 8 or 10 feet and we'd be talking about something different. But let's see what the wetland delineation looks like and then take the next step from there. That's my advice.
I agree with you, Jay. I think we should just continue it, and I'll take a look at the properties, look for some cattails, and anything would be a great improvement to such a property.
Mr. Chairman, I'm certainly not willing to override the considered opinion of a well-seasoned conservation agent, the first one we've had in a number of years here, who says we got to do the right thing. Let's just get it done and get on with it, all right? Stop talking about it. We know what we have to do. Let's do it and get this project moving along. I'm certainly not going to vote to approve any project if there's a great uncertainty as to the delineation. We're a bunch of fools if we do that.
So understood, but of course there is a, you know, if there is no alternative to what's being proposed, then it's an effort that that takes time without any real change to what's being proposed. So, I mean,
Chris, we're talking 2 weeks, all right?
If you were selling, you'd be concerned.
Yeah, that's the only reason why I'm speaking towards that, because it is pending sale. But obviously,
There are a lot of
that's
reasons.
not our
in life-
issue.
There's a lot of reasons in life to be sloppy with our work, and this, 2 weeks.
Change
on a
our judgment.
deal is not
We
one of
need
them.
to be.
That's fine. Jeff, are you amenable to May the 20th, coming back on May the 20th and possibly having it delineated within the next week or so?
I am, that would be fine.
Okay. Then with this hearing is now continued until May the 20th. Okay. Our final hearing this evening is 183 Atlantic Avenue, continued from April the 8th, 2021. It's for a boardwalk and wetland restoration. And I am going to, since Marion has such a bad connection, I'm going to hand this over to Jay. And I'm going to recuse myself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This hearing is a continuance from a couple of weeks ago. There was some documentation that was submitted on behalf of the applicant. Thank you for that. I know we don't have any screen sharing here abilities, but at least not on the agent side. But there was a letter that was submitted. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read that. Appreciate the comments from the applicant to address a public comment by Ms. Conroy that was submitted. So anyway, Jeff Hassett, if you could just give us a little overview on what's transpired since the last hearing and bring us up to speed on that, that would be great.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Jay. I'm actually going to turn over to Michelle. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, this is Sanji Fernando. I'll open today by just, we've met with you guys, I think, over a number of months, over a number of meetings, and want to just say a little bit about what we think about this project and what we're trying to accomplish here. We have a great wetland behind our home. We want it to be one that's full of wildlife, that's thriving with the appropriate native species, it's not full of trash. But I think with the letters that Brad wrote and Jeff could highlight some of the points, it's not in good shape. And I know my wife and I, Michelle, we're committed to improving it. You can see our kitchen window behind us. Like, we want to look out over over wetland that works, like that has animals, that has birds. And it's not the first time we've lived in a home with a wetland behind it. We've been in Cohasset for 20 years, and we lived up on North Main Street, and there's a really big wetland behind us. We loved it. We raised 3 boys there. We cleaned it up. We pulled out all the tire parts from it, and it was full of wildlife. It had muskrats, it had ducks. Around this time in the spring, there are frogs at night, so you fell asleep to that. We never needed or wanted to create a boardwalk to span it because, it was the back of our property, and the only other thing on the other side of the property was the neighbors or the butters behind us. But here, in this new house that we just moved into, there's a great resource here, a beach, those deeded rights to access with the property. And we'd love to use that and take advantage of it. But we want to do it safely. We don't want to wreck the wetland in any way. We know of friends, I'm sure you know many others that you approve who routinely look to take advantage of those resource areas. We've got a great town, and we're lucky enough to have beaches and things like that to take advantage of. So today, you're going to hear a lot from Jeff. He's going to address Julie Conroy's letter that I think, Jay, you referred to. Julie's a resident of Situate, and I think Jeff, in his letter too, detailed exactly how we think we've addressed all her concerns. I think more importantly, you're also going to hear from Jeff a little bit about where the Army Corps of Engineers and other, pretty well established bodies have recommended how to span these wetlands safely. And, I will admit I mistakenly, cleared prickers and dead trees, and that had overgrown this wetland and almost made it inaccessible for anyone. But we want to be here for another 20 years, and we want it to be full of life. We want to not impact it in any way as we access our beach, and we want to do it in a thoughtful manner. Hopefully you'll hear about more of that with Jeff's help.
Great, thank you, Sanjay. So since the last meeting, we did submit 4 documents, one being a revised boardwalk plan. We also submitted a second plan being a supplemental wetland and buffer enhancement plan. We submitted a Morse letter dated April 29th, as well as a support letter by Environmental Consulting and Restoration. So the changes that we made since the last meeting is, at your request, we increased the height of the boardwalk. It's now 3 feet off the ground.
Jeff, would you mind, would you mind just sharing your screen for the site plan? As you go through this, I think you're going to talk about the Phragmites and mitigation, et cetera. It might be helpful just to see it.
Sure.
Blow that up a little bit. Thank you.
All right, so we've noted on the second plan, the supplemental plan, that the trash and debris will be removed from the wetland. Increased the height of the boardwalk. It's the same width, but now it's 3 feet tall. And some of the applicant has specified 3 additional wetland improvements. The first one is that they're agreeing to cut back the Phragmites and then continue to do so in an attempt to kill it off without using any chemicals. The area of the Phragmites is limited on this property. It's only this area here that's about 600 square feet. So I do think it's reasonable to attack that with just by cutting it back. They're also agreeing to enhance the wetland by, in the area where the vegetation is somewhat sparse, they're agreeing to plant 200 plugs. They're about 18 inches on center, and their species are boneset, cardinal flower, New England aster, and ironweed. And they hired Brad Holmes to specify that work. In addition to that, actually I should flip to the next sheet. So those plugs will be planted underneath the boardwalk and on either side of it in that area. In addition, at the beginning of the pathway, it's also sparse vegetation in the upland area. So he's proposing 15 bushes to enhance that area, and then a seed mix. So those upland bushes in the buffer are black chokeberry, high bush blueberry, and shadbush. So some of the things I want to point out that we've also noted in the letter is that you did recently approve a very similar boardwalk at the property immediately adjacent, as you're aware. And there was really only one benefit that project offered, and it was that it removed the boards and got that pathway elevated. In this case, the Fernandos have agreed to five items that really improve the wetland. They're eliminating the foot traffic, they're maintaining the Phragmites, they're cleaning up the wetland, they're enhancing the wetland with the 200 plugs, and they're enhancing the buffer with the 15 bushes. And in addition to that, the walkway is going to be higher in elevation than one next door. So theoretically, less impact and more light will get below it. I think at the last hearing, we talked about how this project is unique. It really is not unique. It's specifically allowed under both the Wetlands Protection Act and your local bylaws. This boardwalk, meets the definition of a catwalk, and the Wetlands Protection Act states that catwalks are permitted, quote, that such structures are constructed on piles or posts so as to permit the reasonably unobstructed flowage of water and adequate light to maintain vegetation, which is exactly how we have designed this. You know, it's elevated at greater than a 1-to-1 ratio, which is what the DEP and the Army Corps recommend. It has spacing between the decking greater than what they recommend. And it's in an area that's relatively shaded anyways by the canopy of the trees. In addition to that, they're going to enhance it with additional plants that are tolerant to this wet area, wet and shady area. And as far as the town regulations, it's very similar wording under the performance standards for docks and catwalks under the Cohasset wetland regulations. They state docks and catwalks must not harm vegetation or other characteristics and functions of the underlying resource areas or buffers. Planking must be sufficiently spaced to allow for passage of air and sunlight. And if wildlife habitat is impacted, the structure must be of sufficient height to allow for unimpeded passage underneath by the wildlife impacted. And again, we certainly meet those criteria. The other thing I wanted to point out is that that other conservations routinely do approve catwalks, boardwalks, exactly like this. We've assisted the towns of Situate and Marshfield on doing exactly these on their conservation land. And you do approve them where there's a destination at the end of it. So another conversation we had at the last meeting was the concern of setting a precedent. If you approve this boardwalk, is every resident in town going to also want a boardwalk? And Sanjay noted this as kind of touched this as well. But this catwalk, typically a catwalk, leads to a pier or a dock. In this case, the destination is the ocean. The vast majority of the other properties in the town of Cohasset, as Sanjay noted, if you cross the wetland, you're just getting to your neighbor's property. There's no reason to justify that. So for all these reasons, we feel that this is a very, very beneficial project for this wetland, and it really should not have any adverse impact on the wetland, and the Fernandos are willing to do significant improvements to improve the area. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Steve Ivas, have you, I know today kind of just came on board. Have you had a chance to look at this project at all?
Yes, I have. I have indeed. If I may make a few comments. First of all, Mr. Fernando, usually wetlands are fuzzy. Okay, I got the impression that an attempt was made to take out the fuzziness. You talked about taking out prickers. Well, the greenbrier happens to be a native species, excellent for wildlife habitat. So my suggestion to you, first of all, is don't touch the wetland except for invasive species after this boardwalk is done. Secondly, I think that the plugs and the selection of species here is excellent. And I would endorse this plan wholeheartedly.
Steve, what have you seen in other towns as far as catwalks go? I want to ask the question, not to get into a long-winded discussion. And we're in the town of Cohasset, so it really doesn't matter what happens in Situate and Marshfield, etc. But the catwalk, we did approve one virtually right next door, and it's almost on this plan to a neighboring project. That was the first catwalk that this commission had done. I just want to get your quick opinion on catwalks.
Well, as you know, you live in Lake Wobegon, so guess what? You're going to have more catwalks. I don't have any problem with catwalks, frankly, as long as they're done properly and the forest is not cleaned up. I had a contractor, a large contractor. You've seen the barrels all over the state. Lives in Norwell. Took down. Basically, he said to me, "Steve, I've cleaned up the wetlands. I'm going to make them drier." Well, guess what? When you take trees and shrubs and herbaceous species out of the wetlands, you make them wetter, because every day during the growing season, you get thousands of gallons of water that are transpired into the air by the trees. That's the only thing that I worry about. So I would say that perhaps what you need here is an inspection every year or something, continuously, to ensure that the dead, quote unquote, dead trees, which some people see as, unsightly, are not cut down. They are very, very important in the ecology of this area. A dead tree, standing dead tree snags, very, very important. If they're next to a house, cut them down. But if they're not next to the house and they're in a wetland area, I would keep them up as long as possible. They provide an incredible amount of wildlife habitat. Birds, insects, snakes, you name it, all in the trees. Yes, and snakes do go up into trees around here.
Yeah. Thank you. There was a question.
Steve, what's your, go ahead.
Go ahead, Marianne.
Steve, what's your advice on the Phragmites? I think they mentioned that they wanted to cut back the Phragmites with no chemicals. Would you recommend just taking them out by the root system by hand?
That's a nice idea, but it's impossible by taking them out by the root system by hand. A fire thrower every 6 months or so is much more useful, but a small section of Phragmites taking out, you're going to have to mow that once every 2 weeks during the growing season to keep the Phragmites down.
I'm not sure that this could be actually mowed.
Yeah.
Well, then it's going to be.
I think it could be weed whacked, though.
Sure, weed whack. It has to be cut every 2 weeks or even maybe every week during the growing season to keep it down. And if Mr. Fernando is willing to do that, then he can do that. But otherwise, it's just going to keep growing.
I'd be willing to do that.
You know, let me. When I was working for the MDC in Boston. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Marianne, I think you keep freezing there. Go ahead, Steve. Why don't you take the floor for a second here? Go ahead.
Sure. Just a quick story. Working for the MDC in Boston, we were excavating next to the Mystic River some Phragmites that had been buried 20 feet below the surface of the ground for 20 years. We took them out and watched them grow, and about 85% of them were very viable. This plant and the English sparrow will take over the world.
Along with Japanese knotweed, Steve.
Yes, but I'm hoping Japanese knotweed get to be combined with some vegetable plant like tomatoes or something genetically, so that it'll provide food stuff. I'm serious. I'm looking forward to somebody figuring that out.
Steve, you know,
I learned this weekend that goats love Japanese knotweed.
Absolutely, and
yes.
There's one going by your house.
Yeah.
The lady with goats going after the knotweed. Steve, question for you. One of the problems that the other projects on Nantucket have run into is what after the Japanese? What do you do when the Phragmites is gone? You have a bare stump that looks like Martian landscape. The question came up is that how do you replant that, and how do you only bring in plants and not invasives into the area that you've cleared? All right. How should this applicant deal with the post harvesting, cutting and planting?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure the applicant is going to be successful in the long run because there is Phragmites on both sides of the pathway. Is that correct? That's what I saw today.
Correct.
There are Phragmites on both sides of the pathway. The stuff grows 12 feet on the ground per year. The pathway is only, what, 6 feet wide or 8 feet wide? So it's going to have to be a continual effort, one that he will not want to keep going, I don't think. I don't think it'll be successful. If the boardwalk is built through the Phragmites, then you'll just have to brush away the Phragmites as you're walking on the boardwalk itself. But to answer Eric's question, I think that there are some fast-growing things that may use the local former Phragmites areas for growth, quick growth. Actually, this year I'm trying something called micro clover on my own property, just to see how fast it'll come up and how fast it is growing. Puts nitrogen back, doesn't grow more than 4 inches tall. So that may do something at least. But otherwise, other plants are difficult to grow in the Phragmites areas.
Jeff Hassett, what is the proposal now for the Phragmites? I thought I heard at the beginning that it was going to be done 3 times a year, cutting of that. What is your proposal to remove the Phragmites exactly?
Yeah, that is correct. We noted 3 times per year, but based on what Steve has informed us, They would, speaking for the Fernandos, I'm sure they would agree to cut it every week or two during the growing season.
Yeah,
They're going to need to. It's a very small section where the boardwalk crosses the Phragmites. It's about 30 feet. But if you don't continue to cut it back, it's going to grow right through the decking of the boardwalk and it'll be a nuisance. So as regular maintenance, they're going to have to cut it back.
Jeff, when we did the project at 189, we discussed the treatment of the Phragmites on the other project. And you were of the opinion that the owner was not willing to tackle that that project because it's a much larger amount of Phragmites. Do you know if that's still the case? Because they're very good at both properties can tackle the Phragmites at the same time. We may have a solution, Steve, if that were to take place.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for them as well, but I think the thoughts there was that that's a big project. They have a lot more Phragmites on their property, far more.
Yes.
So it's a big enough project that it should probably be treated independently.
I agree. What is, if this project were to be approved, what's the time frame on it?
Right away, I believe.
Yeah.
So this summer?
I think right away, like, I'm not an expert, but I think we should get started planting as soon as possible to take advantage of the time of year, I think.
I would agree with that entirely. Yes.
And so what is the construction sequence? As we just remind you, there is a current order, order out on the property now for the mitigation at the beginning of the site there. Is that first on the list to be performed?
Yeah, because of the time, the month we're in, I would recommend doing the replication immediately. And then you may as well do the buffer enhancements as well at the beginning of the path. So you get all your plants planted, then do the boardwalk, and then following construction of the boardwalk, put the plugs in. So the plugs within the wetland would be more like a fall or next spring.
Agreed entirely, Jeff.
Okay.
Any further comments from the commission here? No further comment?
I just wanted to say, I think this is a really weird wetland system, and it's important to take in consideration the macro view of both 183 and 187. I mean, it's not a pristine wetland. I do see it's under stress, this wetland. But I think you have met the burden of proof here. And I think you have done a lot of work to show that you're going to improve the wetland area. Putting in this boardwalk, I think you've actually done it. So it's a very good job. It's improved a lot. But I am very concerned about the wetland and the stress that it's with two parallel boardwalks here. It's dangerous here, but I think you've done a lot of work to prove that improvement. Sorry.
I would agree that the wetland is a weird wetland, but I don't worry about the boardwalks. I would rather see a boardwalk than a path through the wetlands anytime.
Why is that, Steve?
That is because your footprints or your footpath or your footfall on the grass or the wetland itself will have long-lasting impacts, and the boardwalk will have very few long-lasting impacts on the direct soil. I'm thinking about how the soil is done and the first few inches of the soil.
Right, and it's unique because this property doesn't have a well-worn path, whereas we've been asked to look at the other property a lot. But you have to take in the macro view of all of it. But this is better.
There was a comment.
There was no path, so this is extremely unique.
There was a comment earlier by our agent talking about the dead trees, etc. And as I understand, a recommendation to leave them in if they're not in the way of the construction. Is that something that you will be agreeable to?
Yes.
Because if this project is to be approved, I think there certainly will be some conditions that are placed upon the on the approval if in fact it's approved, and that would be one of them. while I'm on it, another condition would be that in the application, and again, we just want to get this right, because in the application, if it says, that you're only going to cut it 3 times a year, and you're out there with a weed whacker or a hand picking it out on a weekly basis, and the neighbor says, hey, wait a minute, he's only supposed to do it 3 times a year, and the guy's out there every weekend, or girl's out there every weekend. And so we just want to make that clear that in the order, if it's approved, that I think I'd probably propose that it could be done on
At
a
least 3
weekly
times.
basis if needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were there any other conditions? And I had another condition that that the sequence of
condition is-
events. Go ahead, Marianne.
Sorry, I keep breaking up.
You keep phasing on us.
Just absolute confirmation that no Phragmites, or the removal of Phragmites, there's no chemicals used in the future.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Mr. Fernando, did you agree to Jay's original plan? I don't think I heard you say yes, that you commit to leave fallen wood that's not dangerous in place. I didn't hear you answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's very important to protect the natural environment.
Yeah, and for the wildlife.
Both fallen and standing wood.
Yes.
Yes, good. Thank you.
Not to complicate it, but there is one tree in photograph 4 here that the boardwalk is crossing. So at least a portion of that would have to be removed.
Yes, I saw that. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. I have some comments on the sequence of events. I think we've already talked about those, but before we get ahead of ourselves, is there any other further comments? It sounds like commissioners are supportive of this project. Unless there are any further comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Would there be a condition for a jute match or an amplifier to stabilize the area, or the bank on the side, let's see, on the west side with the abutting house?
You broke up a little bit. You broke up a little bit, Marianne, at the beginning of that. What would you say?
A recommendation to stabilize the bank on the west side where the house is being constructed could, well, maybe not. Actually.
Yeah, so
I take that back.
This project won't alter that bank, and actually the majority.
No, I'm taking it back. Yeah, no.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm thinking out loud on this.
I had some questions on the construction, the sequence of events, but I think we've got it. I don't need to rehash that again. Any further comments? Okay.
One thing, should the plan be changed to a proposed 3 by 2.5 tall or 3 by 3 tall? Maybe the plan should reflect that change, Jeff. It's my plan that I'm looking at right here does not. Signed notice of intent plan. Is there a newer plan? I guess is the question.
Let me just confirm. We noted 3 feet decking, 3 feet here in height.
If you look down 1, 2, 3, this right there where you've got right there. Take a look at that, where you have the cursor right there.
Yeah.
It's 2.5 by 3 foot tall.
2.5 wide by 3 feet tall.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Great. The plan I have is 2.5 by 2.5. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any further comment? All right, Jay Pimpari will.
Hold on one second. Have we dealt with the comments of Ms. Conroy, who wrote in? I think we should at least make sure that we've dealt with those issues, should we not?
I did address those in writing in my last letter.
Okay.
Correct. The applicant did provide a 4-page comment letter to address that and started to talk about that at the beginning.
Eric, are there any issues that concern you from that letter?
No, but I mean, the list is extensive. I just think we have to encourage people to come in from the outside and provide thoughtful comments. And I just wanted to make sure that, I think we have, all right, but there's nothing in particular. But I wanted to make sure we dealt right with her efforts, but I think it's okay.
I agree. And while I'm at it, I don't see anybody in the,
I did,
who's that trying to talk? I'm sorry.
I did, oh. To address that, I did thoughtfully read through those comments, and there was a lot of mention about, or there was some mention about coastal bank resource, and I did do a lot of research, and I couldn't come up with that answer. So I have looked into that, and I didn't find that, and I even looked into like a 10-year flooding, and I couldn't find that to happen here. So I actually disagree with that comment.
And I don't see, this is Steve Ibis, I don't see any coastal bank in the area, and the nearest FEMA flood zone is off property as well. That's the zone VE, elevation 17, and then you go right to an X on the northwest corner of the thing that's on the screen, the plan that's on the screen right now.
Yeah, I agree with Steve Ibis that there's not a coastal bank here, but I am showing one which we traced off of the plan for the property next door. They called out a coastal bank, so we're showing it.
Jeff, can you show where that is on the plan? I'd just like to take a quick look, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's this blue line, and I disagree with it, but regardless, we're greater than 50 feet away from it.
Right, that doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't.
It's a coastal bank that's not directly adjacent to a beach, which is very unusual.
It's also flatter than 10 to 1.
Right. Right.
Not offsite to further to the
Yes, I understand. Yeah. Yeah, it's in the wrong place.
Yeah.
That's all. That's just my own, my own opinion.
Okay. Further comment? Any comment?
I'm almost hesitant to make any comments, Jay, but I'm going to. And my only comment was, we do look at each of these projects individually, and just because one was approved that was already existing, we look at each one and their merits and their demerits carefully. So I just, each time Jeff Hassett that you mentioned, we already approved a project right next door. That has very little bearing on this particular project because that was a pre-existing project and we were looking at this individually. So I just want to make sure that the applicants understand that it is a process. It can take some time, but very often one doesn't bear on the other, even if it seems that similar. That's all.
We do understand that.
Thank you.
And I'd like to add that the process is a very good thing because we've got a very good design here in the end. So the time is well worth spent.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you, Trish. And although the applicant's probably thinking, I didn't think we would be here for 5 or 6 hearings over the course of 3 or 4 months with all these redesigns, et cetera. We want to get it right. And even though the neighbor had a catwalk, it was a completely different situation for many different reasons, which we won't get into. And we treat each one of these projects, as Trish had mentioned, on its own merit. So thanks for hanging in there.
That's, Jay, that's true. But I consider the prior project a big failure because we were not able to convince anybody to tackle the Phragmites, which is the real big problem on 189. It's still there. It's still looming. It's still going to be a problem in future, and it's an environmental problem. But at least the couple we have here is willing to tackle their own small bit of Phragmites. So good. Well done to you.
Let's
like to add. I'd also like to add that I wish neighbors could get along and work in unison. And I know I think there's a legal issue with this and that, but for future projects that come before us, I wish neighbors could try to work out things like this.
Act like neighbors.
Yeah. Well, both of those, let's table the Phragmite discussion for another time, or a 48-hour issue when we could let the applicants go here in a little bit. And yeah, I agree. The legal issue is out of our jurisdiction. There's nothing really to do with us, but it is what it is. So I'll ask again, any further discussion before I make a motion to move this project forward?
One final comment. Anybody walking this boardwalk will be able to watch the Phragmites move south toward 189.
Yeah, well, I probably will,
Is
no
that a good
offense,
thing or a
I'll
bad
never
thing,
be
Steve?
walking this boardwalk. Don't know the Fernandos, and you look like lovely people. I don't think that I'll be in the backyard. Anyway, I want to move this forward here. Jay Pimpari would like to make a motion to issue a variance without any conditions. I'll save the conditions for the order of conditions for variance for work within the 50-foot buffer at 183 Atlantic Ave. And I'll do this by roll call. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Nay.
Trisha Grady,
Trisha Grady, aye.
Marion Weatherall,
Aye.
Jay Pimpari, aye. That vote passes 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1. Jay Pimpari make a motion to issue an order of conditions for the project at 183 Atlantic Ave with the following conditions. That one, that the trying to read my writing here, that the plan be revised to reflect the Phragmites cutting to be done up to an as needed or on a weekly basis, as opposed to the 3 times a year, which is proposed on the plan. Secondly, that the that all debris, being trash, and I call trash paper wrappers, coffee cups, etc., be cleaned up prior to any mitigation planting or any work being done at all on the property, just a good old cleanup. And 3, that the removal of any excess dead, whether it's down or whether it's fallen or not falling, excess wood, etc., remain in place unless it will need to be removed to actually install the boardwalk itself. And 4, as far as a construction time sequence goes, that the replication plan be done, mitigation planting be completed at the beginning of the boardwalk to close out or at least comply with the existing enforcement order be completed first, and prior to any further construction being done. Were there any other conditions I missed?
Jay, I would like to add the condition that this plot of land remain herbicide-free.
Duly noted. Thank you. With the removal of the Phragmites, it be done by weed whacker or hand only. And I think that we as far as
Jay, did you add in an
Go ahead.
inspection every year? Or yes, inspection every year on this project?
An inspection for what?
To I think Steve
Phragmites?
Itis mentioned that there should be some kind of inspection.
Well, compliance with the conditions, frankly.
Yeah.
Well, that would be left up to the agent. Hopefully the
For
agent
every-
would do that, but I'll save the Phragmite issue, let's put that to the side. The Phragmites are going to continue to grow. If you're looking for, an inspection of the Phragmites, I don't care if the Phragmites grow. It's not my, it's not my house. I don't really have a feeling one way or another on the Phragmites.
You may want, before a certificate of compliance is issued, you may want a couple of reports at the end of the growing seasons on the mitigation plantings. That's a very important condition that should be installed.
I'll leave it that the order of conditions, a certificate of completion should not be issued prior to the completion of the project being fully done. Is what I'm understanding is you're saying you'd like to see a couple of planting seasons before a certificate of completion be issued?
Right, but what you do is you actually have interim reporting from the planter that if you have a problem with less than 75% plants surviving through a season, then you have enough time before the COC requirement after 2 or 3 years that you can actually plant additional plants.
That's a good idea.
Well, how about we make the last condition be that a certificate of completion not be issued until 3 planting seasons have been completed. Is that sufficient enough?
Well, what happens if half of them are dead?
Well, then they don't get the certificate of completion.
Then you have to have a performance standard, a written performance standard. So I would say 75% at the end of three years. 75%.
Good.
Okay.
Steve.
Certainly.
So the last remaining condition would be that I get this right. Steve, you want to make this? You want to add this condition, please, so I get it right?
Yes. A COC. It's actually certificate of compliance. That's how it's in the regs. Shall not be issued until there is at least 75% survival of the mitigation plantings, including the herbaceous species.
Is that after a specific time frame?
No. Once you get to reach 75%, then they should be able to apply for the certificate. That happens everywhere else in the state. Oftentimes it takes 2 to 3 years to do that, however.
Well, I hear you, but if they start the project on Monday morning and the project is completed June 1st, and they come in and comply and ask for the certificate of completion, certificate of compliance on August 1st, and we go out there and 100% has survived August 1st, and they get it, and then September 1st, it's all dead, then that doesn't really make much sense to me.
So make it a minimum of 2 years then.
That's what I was going for 3 planting seasons, but we'll go,
Sure.
we'll add, let's go 3 planting seasons. How's that?
That's
Let's
a
go with
growing.
three-
I was
I go with
growing
3 planting
seasons. I would use the word growing seasons.
3 growing seasons.
Yes.
Great.
That's
Okay.
all.
Having heard a motion with all of the conditions.
Excuse me, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I'm taking the minutes. Could you just repeat that last, well, I'd like to repeat it, please. The one you just said, the COC, could you just repeat that one more time?
I'll take a try at it if you'd like, Jay.
Okay.
Sure.
A COC cannot be issued until there is, number 1, regrowing seasons and at least 75% survival of both the shrubs and the herbaceous species. I'm sorry, shrubs, trees, and herbaceous species. I think you have some trees here too on the list.
And,
And that's after 3 growing seasons.
Right.
okay.
Okay.
Thank
Got that,
you.
Kathy?
And I got that. Thank you. And Jay, when you mentioned the replication plan, could you repeat that, please? If you remember, you made a comment about the replication plan is to be. That's as far as I got.
Oh, that's at the south end of the boardwalk you're talking about, Jay?
Yes, the construction sequence of events that after the debris is all cleaned up, that the first sequence of events be that the replication or mitigation planting be performed in order to comply with the outstanding enforcement order, be a first step in the construction sequence.
Okay.
All set with that?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. We'll do this by roll call vote now. All those in favor of issuing an order of conditions for the project at 183 Atlantic Ave with the conditions that were previously stated, please say your name and yay or nay. Kathy Berrigan.
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower.
Eric Eisenhower, nay.
Tricia Grady.
Trisha Grady, aye.
Marianne Weatherald.
Marianne Weatherald, aye.
Jay Pimpare, aye. That vote passes 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time,
Thank you, Commissioner.
your service. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I turn it back to you.
Much. Okay, that was our last hearing for this evening.
Do you just want to continue 32 Windy Hill to May 20th?
I
Just
think
for the record?
okay, sure. So 30. It's already been said. So thank you. 32 Windy Hill has been continued until May 20th, 2021. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Conservation Chair update. I'd just like to say, I'd just like to inform everyone that Town Manager Chris Senior has reached out to me twice over the last 2 weeks. He is apologetic that Jeff's departure happened so quickly and without information. He has specifically gone to members of different departments of town to please improve communications, make sure we're all aware of what's going on. The Human Resources Department has advertised they are looking through a first round of applications, and that we will then be notified that they have some potential candidates or candidate that they would like for us to be involved in the choosing of. At the same time, he's organizing with the select board to have a meeting so that we might get some clarification on a number of items, including fines that have been levied in the past, and then kind of the working relationships for the Conservation Commission and new agents moving forward. So I just wanted everyone to be aware that that's in the works. I don't think we have any documents to sign tonight. Are there any 48-hour issues that anyone would like to raise with the commission?
I don't want to get into a Phragmite discussion now, so I'll save that because we could probably be here all night. But just to feed off what you had mentioned a little bit, Chris, Steve, can we just ask, and thanks for hanging in there tonight, can we ask what your involvement is going to be over the next month or weeks or months or however time frame it is until a full-time agent is brought on board?
I think I can answer that with 2 words: as needed. Maybe let me add another 2, and appropriate. How's that?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll dive into that a little bit more. Is it assumed that you're going to be reviewing these projects in advance?
Yes, absolutely.
Any new project that comes in, you'll be devoting the time to review stormwater applications, potentially doing a site visit. I understand it's a limited basis. I don't mean to downgrade that, but just limited basis being reviewing of projects that are coming in existing projects and site visits.
Oh yes, absolutely. A site visit is the most important thing I actually do, because how else would you know and understand what the project's going to be unless you see the site, what it is now?
Hold on, while I almost fall off the chair for that one. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Steve, do you record that in like a database, your visits? Because we didn't have that before.
No, I recorded in a little yellow field book. I just put my notes into a little yellow field book. Milton, I've been working in Milton for about 3 years now, and they have an inspectional services group. They would like to get me into recording things on an iPad or something like that, but they don't have the support, the IT supports / funds for that just yet. That's what they're going toward. So that's something you may want to think about in the future, is being able to have an agent actually write stuff in the field when it's right in front of their eyes, rather than try to get back to the office after 3 visits to places. But my little field book works pretty well for me, and has for 35 plus years. This is number 77 field book.
Steve, I think we'll be very happy just to know that you're out there visiting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. Oh no, that's literally the most important thing an agent can do.
Well, I couldn't say that enough. And unfortunately, we have not had that luxury over the past 4 years of an agent who has been proactive in doing inspections. I will point out, Steve, and maybe Chris, you could our chair could send over, we have created on the OneDrive a inspections checklist, and it's so easy that a monkey could fill it out. And it's just an Excel spreadsheet. It's just that you fill in the date that you actually did the inspection. What you're elaborating on is a little more in depth than that, and that's great too, if there was actually a site visit, little log. But we're really just looking for a date that an inspection was done on a particular application, especially when we get a complaint about 100 Main Street. We immediately go and look at the spreadsheet and see, well, our agent, he or she has never been out to do an inspection of the property. So it's very helpful to fill that out. And I don't expect you to go and tackle the backlog, but if these projects are coming up, it would be great to keep it up to snuff.
I'll be glad to check it out. The OneDrive, you say. I heard a word or two about the OneDrive today in the town hall as well. Okay, so good. I will check that out.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be your responsibility or Angela's responsibility. That's where we put all our information as far as trying to look at everything. And it's water under the bridge now, but even if you go under the town's webpage and for tonight's, there was nothing at all with respect to the conservation agenda and public documents. It was all backdated till I think it was April 25th or whatever our last meeting was. So the public has had no access at all to any of the documents for tonight's meeting. And so moving forward, there's a long list of things that could be done. We appreciate your input tonight.
Sure, and in fact, the public should have access. Many towns, maybe smaller than you, have done that very well. What they do is they put the entire notice of intent in a digital format and allow the public to see it. And I think it's a wonderful thing. That's a really, really good thing to be able to have available to the public.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Great.
Okay.
I just want to thank Chris for speaking to the town, to Chris Senior, about the departure of our agent. I was just insulted that we weren't informed, and I appreciate you doing that. Secondly, I did send around to everybody, because we are looking to review or alter the website for conservation. The town is, as I mentioned, going to be redoing the website or the language, but if anyone wants to join in helping create some of that content for our pages, please reach out to me. Chris has shared with me your information that everyone has sent to him, and we'll look at that and look at some other pages as well. It's not going to be a short-term project. It's probably going to take a couple months, but we can do it.
Chris, good luck with the search. If you are the sole member of the commission that looks or is allowed to interview the potential new agent, as I think by now what we've learned from our unfortunate mistakes that have been made over the past 3 or 4 years with our previous agent, both good and bad. And the comment made earlier about stormwater review was sent to the planning board and the ZBA. Well, it's not the planning board's responsibility to make sure that conservation gets a report that's submitted to them. It's also not ZBA. So, that's the agent's responsibility. That should be more in tune to other projects. And I know that, we've got very qualified, knowledgeable people on both of those boards. So who's ever representing them, not the board members themselves, but the agents that represent them should have a little closer connection here moving forward, so that there's some interaction between the agents themselves, so that they can sit down and notify the boards of what's happening. And, we know what we've experienced over the past 3 or 4 years. So hopefully there's an improvement.
I don't wish to be alone in this decision. So they, for both meeting with the select board to discuss things that are pertinent to the entire commission, as well as meeting applicants. As soon as I get any information at all, I'm going to invite everyone. And if you want to come and be part of it, I think the more the merrier.
I should reveal that I have been asked by Justine Hunt to attend the sequence of events that happen around the applicants.
Okay.
Interviews particularly.
Well, you may actually be part of the first round
Yes.
of interviews, but I don't think we're actually involved until the second round.
Okay.
So
If when you get more information, if I can, I'll be glad to try to help. I know my schedule's kind of wonky, but if I can finagle it, I will, because I do a lot of it. Well, I used to do a lot of interviewing back in the day.
great.
good.
Just a side comment, and I know that everyone on this commission, or a lot of you, have mentioned that the clarity between ourselves, the agent, the office, and everything is less than ideal. And I do think that from what Chris Senior said, and what John Halen, the new building inspector, has said, I think they feel the same as well. And I think they would welcome anything we can bring to the table to help organize. And obviously that's not our job, but if we can make suggestions and help them to understand what we need, I think they might help us to get some of it done. So
one method that the town of Milton uses is they actually go out at least once a month to the sites. And there is not only the technical comments that happen during that time, but there's social as well. And people understand each other's point of view perhaps better during a field visit than they do than a Zoom or even a meeting in a room. Just a suggestion, something to consider at some point.
Steve, do you make that a public hearing, or you do that under a site visit without any formal announcement? And I say that because we've got into trouble when it's a site visit, it's not up for deliberation, and we've been kind of.
Oh no, we have deliberations during the site visits. We actually post them. They're posted.
So you post the site visit as like a public hearing, basically.
Absolutely. And in
Okay,
fact,
all right.
oftentimes there's a continued public hearing during the site visit. We also have a class called informational.
Yep.
So we go out and take a look at a site and give the applicant or the engineer or whoever is working with that site some guidance with which to take back to the office and try to figure it all out. We had a really
you're not having to worry about any violation of any open meeting laws. That's great.
Oh, no, not at all.
Not in the least. Yep.
That's right. That's right. And we have a very good administrative secretary, as you do, frankly, with Angela. I've known her for many years, who posts these things. And she refuses to post if we don't have it within 48 hours ahead of the meeting. She says, nope, I'm not posting it. And then we have to pick another day. That's all. That works. That works for a lot of people. And oftentimes we are there with a majority or a quorum at least. We haven't missed but one or two in the last 3 years with a quorum in the field.
Yeah, I think that would be our stumbling block. There is
always is.
Yes. Quorum. We're down to 6 members as is, and probably 54 more days. But who's counting for me?
What we do is we try to poll during the during the regular meetings, during the Zoom meetings or the in-person meetings. Try to poll when people are available.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all. Yep.
Okay.
And Steve, do you post those site visits, those public site visits on the website, or do you have to announce it like in a newspaper? Or how does that happen?
We don't have to announce it in the newspaper, but we do have to post it on the website, and the town clerk also posts it on the town website. And we do, in some cases, we do post times we've gotten into a little bit of trouble with the times, but what we do is we just say, or time 9:45 a.m. or after. That's all. Then the next one might be 10:15 a.m. or after, etc.
Yeah, no, when we could have probably easily scheduled a site visit for a project tonight. That we scheduled a site visit based on everyone's availability, a specific date and time at the hearing. So, that shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be a problem for posting, et cetera, either.
Very good. Very good. Sure. I look forward to you doing that.
Well, I welcome your advice. I think your seniority and expertise is very welcomed here, Steve.
Well, thank you very kindly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
And
Is everybody going to be here in 2
Angela
weeks?
too, and her help through this too.
Mhm. And Jen for hanging in there tonight. I still see her.
Yes.
Oh,
I don't know if she's there. Hey, Steve, do you have any knowledge of any applications that have come in? Our deadline for applications was 48 hours ago from today. It was Tuesday at close of business. We have 3 real heavy hitter public applications that are on the agenda for 2 weeks from tonight. I believe they're all undergoing some type of third-party review. And I don't know if they'll be completed in time, but are you aware that anything else has come in?
no, I did ask that question, and they said no, nothing to date.
I thought Angela said there were 4.
Yes, in fact, I have a what is this? An updated agenda for tonight. There are 4 items on the agenda for 20th of May, right here on this agenda that I
You're
have.
right, there are.
Are we talking about 32, then 10 in the F and G, and then spring, maybe?
32.
3210 F and G and 1 Pleasant Street.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And so just for the record, we're waiting on third-party reviews for all of those.
Oh, really? I was not
No,
aware.
not 32 Windy Hill.
Correct, not 30, not yet.
Okay,
Right.
I haven't gotten into those yet, but I shall in the next week.
Yeah,
There was a letter that came in on 32 today, by the way. So if you want to take a look at it.
Okay, shall do.
but Steve, there is a third party out there and I don't even know if the applicants have paid the fee yet. Who knows whether or not it's going to be ready for 2 weeks from tonight.
Who is doing your third-party reviews? Do you have a various scenario, number of companies, or just one?
Yes, no, I think 1 Pleasant Street is different from the others, but I think Ocean Ledge and Rustway were the same, and Angela told me who they were, and I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Is that Weston and Sampson?
Yes, it was Weston and Sampson.
Yeah,
I think the town hired them. Is that right?
That's a loaded question, Steve. Prior to about a month ago, we were at our own mercy to go out and just bring on our previous third-party reviewer who had done an excellent job and did not have to go out with an RFP if it was less than 10 grand. But under the direction of the town now, we've been requested, or I guess the town is doing it taken upon themselves to just hire on Weston and Sampson.
Oh, interesting. Without your involvement.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, it's a good.
Sorry to hear that.
Interesting is a great word. With zero input from the. See, you're learning all the dirty tricks of the town now.
So we have those 4 hearings. We have the 2 that were continued from tonight.
Yes.
2 that were continued tonight. So we have 6 on the agenda, and we will see how that shakes out.
Could be very quick.
Can I get a motion to close tonight's hearing?
Motion to adjourn.
I
I'll second that.
Having heard a motion and a second to adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hey.
Nay? No nays. I think that's it.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
Great job, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good
Jane.
night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Good
everyone.
night, everyone.
Be safe.